Does money stress you out? They say that stress is the #1 cause of disease and problems in the world, and money is one of the biggest problems or causes of stress. So money is not something that we should take lightly. It's something that we should really get control of. A lot of times they say, don't talk about money because it's one of those taboo topics. I say that's ridiculous, because if we can get our money under control, maybe we can get our stress under control, and the rest of our lives can be happy as can be, or at least happier. So what I want to share with you is 7 tips that if you're stressed out about money, or you get stressed out about money, and trust me, I do too. I have my own problems. I have a lot of anxiety sometimes around money and what happens with my own money. So I'm sure if you have any tips or tricks, I'd love to hear about them, but I'm going to share with you 7 tips that I do, that I've used, and that I've counseled with people to use over the years to help them with how to de-stress about money. My name is Paris Clough, and this is Financial Self-Reliance. I absolutely love helping people manage, protect, and grow their money. And in this video, I'm going to share with you some ways to manage your stress, to manage your anxiety about money, and how money really relates to your life. So the first thing I wanted to do, the first tip, is to remember to breathe. Sometimes when we get stressed out, we just forget to breathe. We hold our breath. And so breathe. Make sure you have take chance to breathe. So often that our identity is basically around how much money we have, what kind of wealth we have, who we are, or the things that we've accomplished. The reality is a lot of our self-worth comes from our net worth. And so it's important to remember that, and it's important to get our money under control so that we can have more control of our self-worth as well. I bet that if a lot of people would get their money under control and manage it more effectively, I bet there would be a lot less mental health issues in the world today, because anxiety, panic attacks, stress attacks, all of those things can relate to and can be found in mismanagement of your money. So first tip I want to give you is to remember to breathe. Tip number 1. Now, tip number 2 is to be humble.
Sit down. Be humble.
One of the biggest problems I find with people is that everybody already knows what to do with their money. I already know what I'm doing with my money. Oh, really? How's that worked out for you? If you're stressed about money, if you have a lot of anxiety around money, if you have a lot of debt, credit card debt or otherwise, you don't know what you're doing with money. I don't say that you know what you're doing with money when you have debt and you don't have savings and you don't have investments and you don't have an emergency fund, you don't have the proper insurance. Don't say that you know what you're doing with your money if you don't have those things. And I promise you, I talk to a lot of people, and most people, realistically, they don't know what they're doing with their money. So be humble. Be humble and realize that, you know what, there's some things that you ought to learn. If your current experience with money is not what you want it to be, there's something that you're doing that's wrong, or something that you're doing that needs to change. And so be humble enough to recognize that you might need to change some things about what you're doing and how you're managing and how your outlook about your money. The third tip is get help.
Stop it. Get some help.
A lot of people, when they look at something, they can't see what's right in front of them because they've been looking at it for so long the same way. It's important to get help, or what I call a second set of eyes, to look at what your problem is. The problems that you're into, the problems that you have created in your life are because of you and because of your perspective and what your mentality is and what your thought process is and what your habits are. So if you don't like the situation you're in, it's because of you that you're in that situation. And getting help is going to allow somebody else to look at your situation and tell you, look, this is what you're doing, this is what you could do better, and let's give you the right tools, give you the right habits, give you the right things to do to be able to maybe make some changes quickly and get to a better result, or at least a different result than what you're having right now. So make sure you get help. And that kind of relates to being humble, because if you're humble, you'll realize that, hey, you know what? I need to make some changes, and what I'm doing is not right. So I need to get some help from somebody who can maybe look at this a little differently, get a different perspective. So just to give you an idea, I do all the bills in my family, make sure that all the money's going into the right places and that everybody gets paid what they need to be paid, and that we have money left over for savings and other things and future goals and things that we want to accomplish, our sinking funds, etc., etc. And the other day, my wife asked me, she's like, what's going on? What's happening with the money? And so I said, let's sit down. And she said, that's a stressor kind of a thing for me. I don't really understand that. That's why you do it. And I said, look, I need help from time to time. I'm doing my best with what we've got, but every once in a while, I need you to look at it, and maybe you can see something that I've missed. Maybe you can see something that I could do better. And so we sat down for probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and we came to some really good conclusions. We came to some really good solutions to some of the things that we're dealing with our income and with our expenses. And it was really good. I asked my wife at the end, I said, now, was that as stressful as you thought it would be? She says, no, it wasn't, thank goodness. And so that's something that's really cool, is that if you have a partner that you're working with, maybe that's somebody that you get help from is your partner, is your spouse. Is that someone that you can really look to and count on, and who's sharing your life with you? It's really important for them to be involved and to be a part of it. Okay, then the fourth tip I want to give you is to set a budget and stick to it. This is critical. You have to know where your money's going. A budget to me is more, I would call it more of a cash flow accountability program, where you know exactly how much the money's coming in and you know exactly how much is going out. Now, one of the things that I will recommend that you do with your budgeting is that a lot of people think that a budgeting is supposed to be constricting. It's just no fun, and there's just nothing involved in a budget that sounds fun or should be fun. Why don't you change that up? Why don't you budget fun money? Why don't you budget some things that you can go out and do and have a good time with? Budget your savings, budget your insurance, budget things that you need to have in order to be safe. So one of the big stressors in my life is, what if something happens while you're driving? What if there's an accident? Do you have car insurance that's sufficient to cover everything that you need? What if I pass away early? What if my wife passes away early? Do we have life insurance? What if we have a health condition or health concern? Do we have a good health insurance policy? So when you know that you're covered with a good health insurance, good car insurance, good life insurance, some of that stress can be totally alleviated and almost eliminated in your life, because you know that those types of things are taken care of. The next thing, though, is to have, maybe if you have a health insurance plan with a deductible, make sure you have a savings plan or a savings account just for your health insurance deductibles, so that you know that even if you have to use the health insurance and you have a deductible or you have a max out of pocket, that's taken care of already for you anyways. And so that stress is gone as well. So make sure that you have a budget and you're sticking to it. This is something that I've done recently. My wife and I have a really good income. We really make a lot of money. And it's kind of the first year or two that we've really had the income that we've had. So we've kind of been a little bit more of a splurging kind of a situation in the last couple of years or so. We used to have a really strict budget, like super down to the dollar budget. And then we started making a ton more money, and we're like, you know what, let's not worry about that and see what life is like and see how things work. Well, we had a couple months this last year where I was like, especially this last month, I was like, hey, we kind of overdid it in our spending. Let's kind of, maybe we need to take a look at that, but maybe creating a budget, but having it be more of a broad budget. Maybe instead of budgeting fun only $50 a month, maybe we can do fun, $200 a month now, but still have a budget that we keep and a budget that we stick to, so that we have the money that we need, instead of having to realize that, wait a minute, why do we make all this money and we have nothing left over to show for it? And that always boils down to overspending, spending way too much money. So make sure that you're keeping track of your expenses and you're doing your best to have a budget that really has everything that you need. Make sure that you have a sinking fund so that you're saving up for things ahead of time. That's part of your budget. Make sure that you have a date night budget for you and your spouse. Maybe you have just going out and hanging out with the guys or hanging out with the girls, a budget. Make sure that you have that fun money as well budgeted into your budget, because you're going to want to go splurge, and don't worry about spending it. That's the fun money that you've allotted. Go blow it every month or every quarter, whatever you allot for that money. Go blow it. Go have a good time. Don't overspend. Don't overdo it, but make sure you have the most fun you can with the money that you've allotted for that. All right, the fifth tip that I have for you to stress out, to help you de-stress about money, every once in a while, it's a good idea to make sure that you really got the best deal that you can get or that you have on the product or service that you're getting. So it's a good idea to maybe call the cable company, call the phone company, call your car insurance company, call your life insurance, call the mortgage company, call around to see if there's a better deal somewhere. Maybe you can get a lower price. Maybe you can, on your car insurance, maybe you can increase the deductible a little bit because you now have a bigger savings account, so you don't need to worry about paying so much money per month. So you can decrease your monthly allotment because you've got the savings now that can take care of the deductible even more. And so there's some things that you can do. Maybe you don't need to have 4 or 5 different subscriptions to different channels and different streaming services. Maybe you can cut out a few of those and you can get to the point where you're really streamlining your expenses. And so call around and make sure that you're getting the best deal possible for all the services that you have, that you're a part of. And make sure maybe your gym membership is the high ultra elite and you don't ever use those parts of the gym. Well, bring that back down to the level where you can use the things in the gym that you're using and you don't have to worry about anything. And the same thing goes with all the different services. Make sure that you're paying for what you're using and you're using what you're paying for. And if you're paying for more things than you're not even using, get that down to a point where you're only paying for the things you're using, and that way you can grow from there. The sixth tip I want to share with you is to create an emergency fund. Now, we've talked a little bit about that, but if you have an emergency fund, I'm telling you, you can breathe a lot easier. That first tip that I was telling you about is to breathe. If something happens and you know that you've got several $1,000s sitting there waiting, ready to go to help you out. Now, there is some stress about once you use that money, how are you going to refill it? So that's part of having that good, strong budget that we talked about a couple of tips ago. And so if you have a good, strong budget and you're constantly flowing money into these savings accounts, sinking funds, emergency funds, then you're not going to have to worry if you have to drain the emergency fund because something legitimate happens. By the way, life is such that something will eventually happen. So having an emergency fund is critical, making sure that you have enough money to cover deductibles, making sure that you have enough money to cover most anything that can happen in life. And honestly, there's no way we can really prepare for everything, but if you're prepared for 80 to 90% of things, you're going to have a much better situation. You're going to have a lot less stress in your life. At least that's how I feel. I get stressed out and a lot of anxiety when I'm not prepared for things. And so I like to over prepare and I like to overdo it sometimes. But when I'm prepared and I feel like I have everything, that contingency plans all in place, that's when I can kind of do that first step a little easier. I can breathe a little easier. So just make sure you have a good, strong emergency fund and sinking funds so that you're saving up for those things ahead of time. You already have money. So if something hits, you already got money for it. The seventh and last tip, before I give you this tip though, I want you to make a comment below. Tell me some of the things that you do to help you de-stress about money. What are some things that are causing you stress about money? What do you stress out about? Like, what are some of the things that are causing you stress and what do you do to kind of de-stress from that? All right, the seventh tip is to remember these wise words. All you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is good enough. There's no way for you to prepare 100% for 100% of the things that are going to happen in your life. The best you can do is just make sure that you have a good income, make sure you have a good, strong budget, make sure you're sticking to that budget, make sure you're putting money in savings, make sure you have a strong emergency fund, make sure you have your proper insurance in place, make sure that all the things, the big things are covered if you have a major catastrophe, and then you know what? Just let it happen. Let life do its thing. If something big happens, maybe it was meant to happen. Maybe there's a lesson in that. I believe in God, and sometimes God just gives you trials so that you're stronger and you're strengthened and that you have the opportunity to do things. If you don't believe in God, maybe it's just life is going to give you an opportunity to grow and to develop and create a new form of a way of thinking that you might actually go through a trial that eventually at some point will help someone else. And maybe you're going through that trial and you're working through that because you're strong enough now, and then you're going to have the strength to then mentor someone else through a trial, and you'll be a saving grace for that person. So remember the 7 tips to make sure that you can de-stress. 1 is to breathe. 2 is to make sure to be humble. 3, get help. 4, create a budget. 5, make sure you call around and get the best deal possible. 6 is to make sure you have an emergency fund for anything that might come up. And number 7 is just to remember, sometimes you just need to let it go. All you can do is all you can do, and that's good enough. Don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to watch the video that I produced last week here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel up here and check out this video that YouTube thinks you might like. Until the next video, make sure to follow these tips. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you then.